Now, Kirk, what's your reaction to seeing now 3 teams with 1 loss ahead of undefeated Florida State?
Wow. And I don't think they're going to go any further. If everybody wins out, I think Florida State, Danny can take a deep breath. They're going to be fine. If they win this week against Georgia Tech, they're not going anywhere below 4. I think the more interesting thing to me is TCU. The fact that they went to 3 isn't for Florida State. It's for Baylor. The fact that Ohio State is 5, even with their loss of their quarterback. The reason we've been talking about Ohio State in this whole debate is about J.T. Barrett and the leadership and the way he's playing and his composure. He's gone. And the committee's still recognizing Ohio State at 5 without J.T. Barrett, and there's Baylor down at 6. So that's the message to me going into this final weekend as game day heads down to Waco and Kansas State is going to be playing the Baylor Bears. That's why they have to win and win emphatically to be able to have a chance to be in this discussion, and especially now that they're 3 spots behind a team that they beat head-to-head. If they don't play well and dominate, I still don't know if that's going to be enough, but that will at least get them into discussion.
Okay, so is it your belief, and it's hard to predict with the first year in the committee, and we don't have conference championships to consider yet. Is TCU in a spot if they simply beat Iowa State, in your judgment, based on what you're seeing here, that they can't move, that they're not going to move out of the top 4?
Reese, I really felt the last 4 weeks that it was just a matter of time until we got to the end of the season that eventually the head-to-head would come into play and that Baylor would go by TCU. Every Tuesday night I've been talking about that. And I really think that we're splitting such fine hairs here that the way they played last week near the end of the year, people can talk about TCU and Kansas, but the resume is much stronger for TCU. So when you're debating about Baylor, they needed to just take care of Texas Tech and take care of Kansas State. And then I really believe they would have flipped over TCU. The fact that they needed to hold Texas Tech from a 2-point conversion late in that game for a tie, I think that hurts some momentum for them, and I think that's why they are where they are this week, because of what they did last week. Whether it's fair or unfair, I just think they lost momentum based on the way they played last week.
Do you see this big discrepancy in the bodies of work, Danny? TCU Baylor?
No. And I think the committee has set 2 standards that I'm not real thrilled with. One is that they would take an undefeated team and put them at 4 and have all these other 1-loss teams. The other is that so far they have ignored the head-to-head matchups, and I think those are 2 bad precedents to set.
I agreed with the Florida State move. I've kept them at number 1. They're undefeated. They deserve to be higher than number 4. I've always been with TCU in this situation. I agree with the head-to-head mattering. I think when you factor in a 5-loss West Virginia team beating Baylor, that also matters. Everything we talk about is neutral site. They beat TCU at home. Reese, I know you've been a little bit against that, but they beat them at home in a situation with some calls at the end of that game, a 21-point lead. We talked about game control. So I thought those things mattered when you add the Minnesota win to TCU. It overrides, in my opinion, the head-to-head.
See, I understand that the only difference in their schedule, and they both played an FCS team. I don't care if it's a good or bad FCS team.
Right.
That's one you should win. They played the one same common opponent out of the conference, 9 conference games the same.
Yep.
Minnesota, good team, but that trumping a head-to-head, and look, it's an entire body of work, I understand, but it's hard for me to get past that one game is enough to create this big discrepancy.
The way the head-to-head
you look at all the numbers here, the strength of schedule, they're all pretty comparable.
They're all pretty close. And like I said, it's the way the head-to-head played out and where it played out at. At Baylor, the 21-point deficit, the comeback, the interference call at the end.
Yeah.
I think there's factors.
I mean, I understand, but also Baylor came from 21 down. That shows something. And, Kirk, you and I, we agree on a lot of stuff. I don't see this big difference in the body of work between Baylor and TCU that you do. Now, look, if you want to tell me you think TCU is a better team, fine. I'm inclined to believe that, too. But in terms of resume, I don't see much difference.
Well, I think they're 19 spots higher in strength of schedule. The good news for Baylor is they have 2 wins against top 20 teams ranked this week against TCU and Oklahoma. The bad news, those are the only 2 wins against teams with a winning record. Digest that. Think about that. The only 2 wins with a winning record. And at the end of the day, for me, what you just said, and you happen to agree with me, if you want to just say TCU's a better team, fine. That's what I'm saying. I think TCU is a better team. Offense, defense, special teams. I think they're a better team. They blew a 21-point lead with 9 minutes to go. I got it. I just think they're a better team all the way across the board.